So guys, you must have heard the golden rule that you should not make too many pawn moves in the opening. But in today's video, I'll show you this incredibly weird and crazy game where white made 17 pawn moves in a row and he still won the game. Now we'll try to learn some key ideas from this so that you can also surprise your opponents with this unusual opening strategy. And along the way, we'll also discuss how to counter such annoying opponents who like to push their pawns in the opening. There's a lot to learn, so let's get straight into it. Now guys, this was a serious tournament game played in 1984 between two players who were rated well above 2000. Emil Joseph Diemer was playing as white and Dr. Thomas Heiling was playing as black. Diemer was a German chess master who also has an opening named after him, the Blackmar-Diemer Gambit. He preferred taking full control of the center, so in this game also he played f3 with the idea of pushing e4. Black goes for g6, looking to fianchetto his bishop, but Diemer doesn't give a damn. He just continues pushing his pawns. The bishop is out and now a normal player would simply develop his knights and bishops, but Diemer is just too obsessed with his pawns. This time he attacks the knight. Now a good option here for black would be knight h5. This looks a little awkward, but that would have allowed black to take charge of these important dark squares. And if he ever got an opportunity, he could have jumped into white's territory to go after these pieces. So knight h5 would actually have been a good move, but Thomas is not that daring to take this risk. So he simply goes back to d7. Again, white moves another pawn on the king side and now we have 6 pawn moves from Diemer. By the way, h4 would have been a better way to defend, but Diemer had his own unique style. Anyway, black tries to break the center, but c5 is a very timid move. Look, this is an open war and you have to fight like a brave warrior. Instead of making these slow moves on the side, you need to be bold and gutsy. You need to face the situation head on and break open the center, especially when you have so much backup around e5. You cannot allow your opponent to keep throwing pawns at you and eating up your space. You need to stop him. But for some strange reason, Thomas decided to play on the queen side instead of aggressively hitting right in the center. Well, Diemer just loves this as it allows him to continue marching forward with his pawns. Now, if you notice, we have this really strange pawn structure which I think looks like a cupcake. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, black just continues playing on the queen side. And in case you're wondering, white can't take this because you have this tricky little double attack which picks up the bishop. Even if he blocks, this pony can easily be eliminated and the bishop is still lost. Diemer, of course, was too experienced to fall for this kind of a trap, so that didn't happen, and he just made another pawn move. Thomas, as usual, continues playing on the queen side and Diemer keeps advancing on the other side. It looks quite obvious now that Diemer wants to suffocate black on the king side. A good option to stop that would be something like h5. Even if he captures en passant, you at least activate your bishop and get some breathing space on the king side. The problem is that black is not addressing this main issue. He's just focusing on the other side where nothing is really happening. Look, again he plays knight b6. Diemer is happily pushing forward. But now finally black gathers some courage to challenge the center and he plays e6. But Diemer is still unaffected. He continues nailing down his opponent, kicking the bishop back to its home. And after dominating the king side, Diemer now goes a4, attacking on the queen side. Thomas tries to simplify the center, but Diemer is always moving forward and attacking. In contrast, black is just defending and he keeps going back. Now the good thing about all these pawns is that you can literally attack anything and push your opponent on the back foot. Just look at these retarded pieces. This knight can't really move because all these squares are taken. And the same with this knight. He also cannot go anywhere because of these pawns. Seems like the entire black army has locked themselves inside their own house and they've gifted the keys to white. It's not a good position for black. The best he can do is to somehow develop the bishops and then try to make some space for the knights. So we have bishop to e7 and no prizes for guessing what Diemer played. Yes, it's another pawn move. Now Thomas realizes that he can't do much on the queen side, so he tries to open up the king side. Now if Diemer takes this, then he just opens up a can of worms because black can simply recapture. He can castle short and out of nowhere, all these pieces are suddenly unleashed to pounce on this naked king. Of course, Diemer doesn't want that, so he maintains the tension and he takes on the other side. Thomas captures on g5 and with the support of the bishop and the queen, this looks pretty good. Again, taking this pawn opens up the game for black, so a much better option would be to tie him down on the queen side and get some development going. But here, Diemer does not go for b6. In fact, he's not even taking on g5. Instead, he goes for a very strange looking pawn to f5. Now this is move number 17 and Diemer has just been bombarding the enemy with his pawns. And these lazy pieces are just happily enjoying the show. It's an absolutely unbelievable position. If you're also enjoying this game so far, then don't forget to hit that like button below this video right now. Anyway, now after f5, we've reached a very critical point in this game. If you look at it from Black's point of view, this was a great opportunity for him to castle and secure his king. Even this rook becomes deadly, and along with these knights and bishops, this looks pretty scary for white. But Thomas just couldn't resist this free pawn and he fell for the trap. This diagonal is now wide open, which allows white to take back the advantage by bursting in with his queen. And finally, we see the first move from white, which is not a pawn move, and fittingly enough, it comes with a smashing check. King f8 is forced, and now we see another aggressive move with tempo. He attacks this pawn thrice, so we have rook g8 defending this pawn. Now Diemer realizes that it's been 2 moves since he last touched a pawn, and by his standards, that's totally unacceptable. So there comes pawn to b6. These pawns are so powerful that Black is now completely handicapped, especially all these pieces are just useless. Maybe that's why Thomas tries to get his bishop out, but I think a better way would have been to attack with tempo, go after the queen, and then develop towards the king side. However, Thomas preferred the other way around. So bishop b7 attacks the pawn, and this gives Diemer a good opportunity to develop another piece. Ultimately, Black played knight f6, but it was just too late because the situation now is different. Now Diemer finds this beautiful little tactic, knight takes on g5. You hang your queen, but since this bishop is no longer controlling this diagonal, your knight can jump in, you fork the king and his sweetie. Black has to take the queen because there is also this checkmate threat. Therefore, knight takes, we have a check, king moves, and the queens are off the board. Now both the knights are under attack, so this pony jumps into g3. No point saving the rook because you lose the knight for free. Therefore, knight takes bishop, Black takes the rook, and then comes bishop to f4. Since this pawn is attacked twice, Black defends it with the rook. White castles, the knight tries to escape, rook e1 pins the bishop, and now d6 is under serious attack, therefore the king steps away. Now in this position, the engine prefers king f7 or even f8. But you might wonder what's wrong with king d7. I mean, this looks quite logical because the king can come to c8, pick up the knight, and that's just great for Black. Well, Diemer shows that even though he is 76 years old, he's still quite sharp in finding tactics. He comes up with this absolutely brilliant move, knight to b5. So what's the idea? Well, the point is that white is pinning down the black pieces from everywhere. And the most important thing is that this knight can't be taken. Just look at this. The bishop controls this diagonal, the knight controls d8, and the pawns control these 3 squares. So the only move left is king c8. And after rook takes on e7, this checkmate is inevitable. Even if Black tries something like knight a6, then rook e8, king b7, and bishop c6 still results in a checkmate. So knight a6 doesn't work. But what about knight c6? Well, that also won't work. You guys can find out the mating sequence and let me know in the comments. Okay, so going back, knight b5 is a fantastic move. Now since Black cannot capture, we have knight e4 on the board, defending this critical pawn. Now Diemer comes up with another surprise. He's just grabbing the knight with his rook. He's throwing an open challenge. You can take whatever you want, but I'll expose your king and just tear him apart from all sides. As you can see, Black is under serious pressure. So in this position, he does not take the rook. Instead, he comes down going after this powerful bishop. White simply comes back to e1, saving his rook and defending the bishop. Now Black just wants to get rid of these annoying pieces. So first rook takes on f1, white takes on f1, and now that the bishop has been eliminated, he can safely pick up the knight. Now if you look at it, the material is equal, but white's pieces are much more active and these passed pawns look really scary. Anyway, white plays rook g1 trying to get in through this open file. So king c8 from Black attacks the knight. White of course can pick up this pawn. Black captures, white recaptures, and then we have knight d7. He's trying to protect this pawn somehow, but it's already too late. Because after rook g8 check, king b7, rook g7, king c8 defending the knight, and now simply rook takes h7 and the pawn is lost. From here, it's quite simple for white. Just push this pawn, promote to a queen and win the game. And there's actually not much Black can do about this. So he just takes this pawn, and here white in fact can just sack his rook for the knight. He can march forward and win it easily. But he chooses to give a check. Now if he goes here, then he'll have to block with the knight, and it's just curtains for black. Therefore in this position, black is forced to take the pawn. Then the knight is gone, and then white simply pushes forward with h7. Not much black can do to stop this promotion, so he tries rook a1 check, but the king just moves away. Now the rook could go to h1, but it doesn't matter because after rook g7, black can play anything, and after another rook check, we have all these exchanges, and ultimately he ends up with an extra rook, which is completely winning for white. So anyway, in this position, Thomas did not even try to stop this pawn. He just captured the rook, the queen was reincarnated, king takes bishop, then queen d8 check, and after king e5, d6, Thomas Heiling resigned, and Diemer managed to win this in spite of opening with 17 pawn moves in a row. And can you imagine, after all this drama, this b2 pawn didn't even make a single move. What a crazy game. If you're a fan of unconventional chess, this was definitely an inspiring game to watch. Alright, so it's puzzle time. In this position, it is white's turn, and you need to find the best move for white. Share your answers in the comments. Let's see how many of you get this right. Guys, do subscribe to the channel, and I shall see you in the next one.